Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Orphan Black as well as the 100. In this episode of Orphan Black, we have Mrs. S, Siobhan, Kira, Sarah, and Kendall all coming back home because, the evolutionists essentially tracked them down in Iceland and they're coming back home. There's some interesting things, come up in this episode with them kind of returning home. For one, it's Felix. And you can kind of see it in this episode. Felix was a little bit towards Sarah because when they were calling him and everything, he was kind of ignoring them. And it seemed like Allison knew what the reason was because she was like, you should tell them what you've been doing this entire time. But he was super reluctant. It was like, okay, what is this thing that he's keeping from them? What would he feel the need to keep secret from it? And the fact is that he was looking for his biological parents. And then Sarah's kind of like, why did you do that? It's like, no, me, Mrs. S, and Kira, we're your family. But then Felix kind of brings it up. He's like, no, I'm not. Kira, and you have your clone sisters. That's your family. Plus, even Miss S is related to you to an extent. Because Sarah and the others come from Kendall's genetics, and Siobhan is Kendall's daughter, so they are technically related. So. But, it's kind of like Felix doesn't have a place in the family anymore. He kind of like, because they're kind of a real biological family, and just like, he kind of feels a little left out of it because it's like, in all honesty, where does he fit in all of this? Because it just seems like he's kind of rolling with the punches. He just kind of got dragged along in everything, and he's just, I guess, trying to find his place. Then you have Cosima still being sick. Things aren't progressing there isn't a cure. She's going through little bits. They're trying to work on a therapy for her. It's not possible for her to go back to Kira, because it's like if she used, Kira to kind of ease her symptoms, it would be like it would skew the whole therapy she's currently trying to perform. It's like essentially they'll never get a true 100% diagnosis of everything. They won't really know what to do with Kendall's I'm not even phrasing this right. I don't know how to phrase it. Essentially, using Kira to help Cosima would just basically trying to use Kendall's DNA to help find out what's wrong with Cosima and help find a cure harder, essentially. And speaking of Kendall, we end up finding out, because Scott ended up finding out, is she has leukemia, but she wants to keep it on the hush because she doesn't want to be pitied. Because essentially, Siobhan, after so many years, is kind of back in her life. They're kind of in a good place, and she doesn't want to ruin that by, having them be sad about it. So she's having Scott keep it on a down low, too. And, also, because in this episode, this is my first time seeing what happened to Cosima. I mean, not Cosima, Delphine, because I never actually watched that part. I made sure to keep looking away because I knew it was going to come. So just like the preview at the beginning of this episode was the first time I ever saw what happened to Delphine. And, Cosima's kind of like what did happen to her. She knows that Delphine kind of knew something was going to happen, but, she's just like, I felt it and it seemed like it. She's like, I miss her so much. Because she wants Mrs. S, she'd be like, could just tell me that Delphine's okay. And like, Mrs. S is like, I honestly can't. Because, this is a war and there's going to be a lot of casualties. It's like, but truth be told is we don't know if something did happen to her or not. So don't kind of lose hope. In this episode, we also had Sarah and Art looking into essentially a past case of Beth. It's the one that we saw last episode that dealt with that evolutionist who had his jaw, like the piece of his jaw, his cheek removed. Essentially that case, because Art realizes that MK is connected to that because they're trying to track down MK. But they're like, the only way we're going to be able to track anything down is by, they essentially go to Beth's place and rummage through her stuff. And it's like, because they're trying to get an understanding of what was going on, because Beth hid a lot of stuff. not just from art, but from everyone, because she kept a lot of the stuff that she did to herself. No one really knows except for Beth. Like, so they go through her place and they find the hidden camera, because Sarah brought it up to Art. It's like, oh, this is the surveillance equipment she got from the department, because what was his name? Raj, yeah, liked her, and you kind of almost see this look on Art's face, like, because Art had a thing for Beth, and Beth also got visited by that guy. He's a neo-lutionist, or at least he's connected to them. He's a part of the police department. He's essentially telling her to back away, stop looking into things. But like Art says, Beth and Sarah have one thing in common. They're very stubborn. So obviously she kept investigating into it. And we end up finding out that she found out something. Not sure what it was, but she was literally wearing a blonde wig. She had a gun with her. When she came back to the house, she had blood on her hands, and she was just flipping out. She was basically telling MK it was over, telling MK to look after the others, that she was just basically done, that there was no winning this. And essentially that was the night she killed herself. I mean, that was around the time she killed herself, which I got that. Like, I thought that was kind of neat, because I was wondering about that, like last episode I brought that up. It's like, will we get to see, I thought it was all going to lead up to when she killed herself. It's like, yeah. But obviously we don't know everything, because it's like, where did she go, and whose blood was that? What happened to freak her out that much? What did she see that made her decide to kill herself? So obviously throughout the season we probably will get even more flashes to Beth, particularly this event, finding out what happened. I don't know if this is going to be the last time we see Beth, or will there be more? I don't know. And also in this episode, we had Donnie taking Helena to get for a checkup on her babies. And I love that, pretending to be husband and wife, she's pretending to be Allison. And then she gets an exam on her stomach, and it's like, uh-oh, she's having twins. Which is like, to her, it's an amazing, because she's like, I got to tell my sister. It's like, one of the twins is having twins. And, identical twins to be exact, which is interesting enough. I never knew you could tell that ahead of time, because apparently, what was it? Because they share the same placenta, was that it? That's how you tell they're identical twins, is if they share the same placenta, if I remember correctly, or they're in the same egg. I don't remember how that was explained, but it's like you could actually tell that early on because of that certain thing, that whether it's identical twins or fraternal twins. Because the fact is, Helena hasn't been informed about the fact is of Sarah's situation. She doesn't know that Sarah's back in town. And Donnie kind of talked to Allison about it, just because kind of like, I mean, this is awesome. But then Allison's like, well, Helena's a little unstable. Let's not forget that she's killed people. And then Donnie brings it up. He's like, yeah, but we've killed, yeah, but so have we. She's like, what was a term she used? I forgot what. Obviously, it's like a manslaughter. She's like, yeah, manslaughter, but she was trained to kill people. And it's just like, you're splitting hairs, okay? Everyone there has killed someone, so, And Donnie kind of brought something up that was interesting. It's like, you're a little, he didn't outright say it, but it's like a little envious because they can't have children. Because, Helena and Sarah are the only ones. They're kind of anomalies, and they're able to have children. None of the other clones can. And Allison's kind of like, no, that's not, the case, because she does have her family, but probably, because we know it bothered Rachel, because she flipped out, when she found out the truth from her dad last season. The reason why Sarah's able to have children is because she's an anomaly, that they were all made not to, be able to give birth. And it's, a little sad not being able to have your own children. And then you have someone like Helena being in her situation, and she's able to have children. So it's got to bother you a little bit, but she was looking at the sonogram and she did smile. So it's like, I don't, in some part of her brain that does bother her, because, Helena has a lot to deal with, because the fact is she kind of adds a little chaos to the household where, Allison's kind of type A and she kind of keeps things in order. So Helena kind of throws that all off for her. But, I don't know if that's going to turn into a thing or not. I feel like it probably eventually will, but who knows? And we also have Sarah meeting up with MK. I mean, obviously, MK keeps her distance. She's basically explaining that she's not going to get Sarah to dive any deeper into this. She doesn't want Sarah involved because she's afraid Sarah's going to end up like Beth, killing herself because finding out the truth. I mean, because even MK doesn't know the whole story of why Beth did what she did. Because, like I said earlier, that whole situation with the gun, like, MK doesn't know what it was that Beth saw that she like that freaked her out like that, because as we saw, she cut up like whatever card that was connected to where she went. She cut the card up and flushed it down her toilet. So it's like, what did she see that was so terrifying? Apparently MK knows about those things, those little bug things in people's cheeks, but she's not letting Sarah, like I said, she doesn't want Sarah involved, so she's keeping her distance. And then we see those two Nevolutionist people who they're essentially, I guess, the killers, the ones that have been getting those things out of people's cheeks, whatever the hell those things are. And basically, they touched inside of Sarah's mouth, and then, they were looking for the scar, but they were like, no, okay, this isn't Beth. It's like, oh, but it's like the moment they touched that, they knew it was Sarah. It's like, so are those specifically tied to people? Like, is it kind of like an ID chip? It's kind of like, oh, once you touch it, you kind of are. Like, how do you identify someone like that? Or was there something else that let them identify that she was Sarah? And also, we found out those things, like, if you mess with them, without handling things properly, apparently those things will kill you. Because we saw one person, like, someone cut into his cheek, and then it like, surged throughout his face, and apparently it killed him. We didn't really get to see the full effects of what it looks like. But, Sarah ends up, going back home. She's freaking out. She's like, check my mouth. She's like worried about Kira and trying to check Kira's mouth. But she has Mrs. S like put a flashlight up to her mouth, and we see that thing squirming in her. So it's like Sarah has one, and apparently Beth had one. So does that mean all of them have one inside? It's like, what the hell are those things? What is this all about? It's crazy, dude. And something kind of interesting bouncing in the back of my head. What if I get a feeling Delphine might make an appearance? Like I said, I didn't watch her death scene because I didn't want to. It was super sad, and I didn't want to see that happen. But you kind of get a bit of it at the preview, and it's like, I feel like in some shape or form they might bring her back. Like the Nevolutionist did something to her, and she might come back. It might seem like she's a-okay, but then it's like, no, she's not. I don't know. I could be overthinking it, but just something that was just floating in the back of my mind when I was watching the episode. Now, moving on to this week's episode of The 100, we find out a little bit more about how the second AI is supposed to work. Whereas, had Allie, the reason why she wiped out humanity with the missiles and kind of left Earth in the situation it is because she felt like there were too many people. But basically, the second AI is supposed to meld with kind of, I think, a person's brain and basically become more human. So it won't want to kill humans because it will think like, oh, I'm human, and it'll think and feel kind of like a human. So it'll want to protect humanity. The group ends up going back to Arcadia. Everyone's gone. So they're there, specifically to find Lincoln's journal so they can find Luna. And sadly, we had Octavia. She looked at the spot where Lincoln died, as well as went in his room and kind of tossed things around. And it being there just cemented it more that he was gone. And Jasper was trying to ease her pain a little bit. It kind of didn't work because she was essentially kind of like, no, I can't. I have to keep my cool because it's like, we can't, as a warrior, you can't mourn the dead until the war is over. So, but they end up getting attacked. And lo and behold, who is it? It's Emerson, the guy from, literally the only person left from Mount Weather. He was the guy that Clark had a chance to kill, but she let him go. She kind of convinced Lexa to let him go. Mainly because she knew it would be hypocritical if she killed him and then wanted Lexa to keep her people alive. That whole situation. But now he's coming after them and hunting them. I love how the fact is he ended up getting killed by that chip. Because, if you put the AI in someone that doesn't have the blood of the commander, it will kill them. and pretty brutally too, because he was scratching at his neck. Because it was interesting because when she like activated it and put it towards his neck, it dug into his neck and then it went to the back of it. And it's just like, oh, he's just scratching at it. And his eyes are bleeding. It kind of looked like it almost looked like it knocked his eyes out. It didn't. I guess not. They just kind of exploded or something. Or maybe it was just so much blood in his like eye sockets that it looked like his eyes just exploded. But it was pretty brutal. Which I'm like, he kind of deserved. I get it. You're the last person of Mount Weather. To me, I get why Clark did what she did. It may not. In a situation like that, I feel like there was no good decision. Let her people die, or basically sacrifice everyone in Mount Weather to make sure her people live. So it's like, I don't know. Because basically he's blaming Clark because it's like all those other people died, men, women, children, people he cared about, friends he cared about. Essentially, he was being a little twisted. He was going to essentially let Clark watch as her friends suffocated, basically. Kind of watch them die as he kind of had to watch everyone around him die. And sadly, because of him, Sinclair is dead, which is like, holy crap, they are dropping characters like crazy. It's like boom, boom, boom. This is like the fourth, because we got Monty's mom who died. Like fourth, like pretty reoccurring characters like died. First you had Lexa, then you had Lincoln, you had Monty's mom. Now you have Sinclair. It's just like they are dropping characters like crazy. Because I was wondering what this was going to be about, this thing that was attacking him. I thought it was a thing. I didn't know it was a person per se. Because we had, Miller at the beginning of the episode telling that story to Harper and Ryan. And it was just, trying to scare them. And I was like, okay. I knew it probably didn't have anything to do with that. Which I'll admit, that opening was very good. Except that kind of creepy, like horror kind of tone to it. I thought that was kind of nice. I think that's that's the scariest opening that's ever popped up in the 100, at least to my recollection. But they kind of gave Bellamy kind of did a nice thing. He found Lincoln's body and brought it out to Octavia, and Octavia kind of cried. She was able to kind of mourn him now, because Octavia kind of uses the pretense that she's a warrior. She kind of used that as a way of pushing herself forward. She, because she's like, as long as I kind of have my warrior instinct in that, kind of like, as long as I push forward, I don't have to be bogged down by my feelings, like let this stuff in. As long as I can keep it at bay and keep myself pushing forward, going after a specific enemy, I'm kind of fine. But they kind of said their farewells to Sinclair and Lincoln. But we have Raven. She stays back behind with Monty, Miller, Ryan, and Harper. They're all staying there because they need to, while Bellamy and the others kind of go off to find Luna, who, interestingly enough, I thought, it was random in my mind. I thought Luna was totally going to be Murphy's girlfriend. I thought she just like maybe didn't remember her name, or maybe she was hiding herself, just because of the way she was so fascinated by way everything was going on in that the flame chamber room. And it's just like, oh, I thought that was totally her, just and no one knew it, and that Murphy would figure it out and try to protect her from Antari. That's what was going through my mind. I did kind of like that though. Murphy's trying to keep things between Antari and him, like secret from his girlfriend. I mean, eventually it came out, but it's like because she was kind of thinking, he was kind of like, how did you pull this gig? Because they kind of con people and steal from people, and that's what she thought this was. She was like, oh yeah, Murphy. She's like, but to my surprise, finding out you're the right-hand man to the commander, like, how did you pull that off? He ended up spilling the beans to her about the whole flame situation, which comes back to bite him in the ass when Thelonious shows up and essentially throws it out. The fact is that she's not the true commander because Murphy's girlfriend had took one of the chips, so she was under Allie's control the entire time. And then Murphy's telling Antari not to trust her, but Antari doesn't listen. And essentially, Thelonious gets her to eat the chip, swallow the chip. And now, the episode ended with Allie being on a throne. It wasn't Antari sitting on a throne, it was Allie sitting on a throne. And it's just like, holy crap, because for now, it's always been confined just to the people in Arcadia, but now we're getting grounders affected by her too. Didn't a grounder swallow one of the chips before? Or maybe that was, I don't remember. I thought someone had swallowed a chip before and it went crazy. I don't know, maybe I'm misremembering things, but it's crazy to think about. Allie's already got everyone in Arcadia under her control. Like, now she has Antari, the quote unquote commander, under her control too. It's just like, there's no telling just how much damage she can cause. It's like I said, last episode, the last one in Super-Fanta-Fi, I talked about the fact is that group is on their own because they can't go back home to Arcadia, and Antari already hates the Sky Crew, but it's like even more so now that Antari's under Allie's control. That means she can send people after him, so it's like they have to worry about people from Arcadia and the grounders even more now, because it's like no telling like how much her influence is going to go. Like she might get Antari to have all the ground people, Tree Crew, to come and take these chips. So it's like even more people under her control. So I cannot wait to see where everything goes next episode. An interesting thing I'll bring up too that kind of came up, Monty kind of brought it up. The fact is that technically his mom is still alive because she's in the City of Light, but it's like, does that truly exist? Because basically when you die, your consciousness gets uploaded there. To me, I look at that as just kind of like, it's like a computer database. That's all it is. Because that's kind of always a thing. Like people are like, oh yeah, download your mind into a computer. And as because it's like, is my mom still alive? He asked Raven that, and Raven's like, it depends on what you call alive. So it's like, because he's worried, like, what if they destroy Allie? So what does that mean for people like his mom who are dead? It's like Clark's mom will be fine, like she'll snap out of it, but it's like, what happens to someone who's already dead and their mind is in the City of Light? Do they just simply disappear? And they never really get back to it because Clark is interrupted, but it's like, dude, like, that's why part of me is worried that maybe Monty might turn into a problem because of that. I mean, it's sad because, it's not only that his mom died, he was the one that killed her, so that's a lot to take on. Bad enough your mom being dead, but you being the one that killed her, that's a lot to take in, especially considering she just came back in his life at the beginning of the season. So, but that's really all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.